The liturgical rites and particular churches of the Catholic Church are closely related yet distinct. The term church refers to a hierarchically ordered assembly of the faithful, whereas the term rite refers to a liturgical, theological, and spiritual heritage. Therefore, even though particular churches and liturgical rites are often closely interrelated, churches and rites must, for the sake of clarity, be listed separately. Churches. In Catholic teachings, a church is an assembly of the faithful, hierarchically ordered, both in the entire world, the Catholic Church, or in a certain territory, a particular church. To be a sacrament of the mystical body of Christ in the world, a church must have both a head and members. The sacramental sign of Christ the head is the sacred hierarchy, the bishops, priests and deacons. More specifically, it is the local bishop, with his priests and deacons gathered around and assisting him in his office of teaching, sanctifying and governing. The sacramental sign of the mystical body is the Christian faithful. Thus the Church of Christ is fully present sacramentally wherever there is a sign of Christ the head, a bishop and those who assist him, and a sign of Christ's body, Christian faithful. Each diocese is therefore a particular church. On the worldwide level, the sign of Christ the head is the Pope, and, to be Catholic, particular churches, whether local churches or autonomous ritual churches, must be in communion with this sign of Christ the head. Through this communion with Peter and his successors, the Church becomes a universal sacrament of salvation in all times and places, even to the end of the age. The word church is applied to the Catholic Church as a whole, which is seen as a single church. The multiplicity of peoples and cultures within the Church and the great diversity of gifts, offices, conditions and ways of life of its members are not opposed to the Church's unity. In this sense of church, the list of churches in the Catholic Church has only one member, the Catholic Church itself. Within the Catholic Church there are local particular churches, of which dioceses are the most familiar form. Other forms include territorial abbacies, apostolic vicariates and apostolic prefectures. The Code of Canon Law states, particular churches, in which and from which the one and only Catholic Church exists, are principally dioceses. Unless the contrary is clear, the following are equivalent to a diocese: a territorial prelature, a territorial abbacy, a vicariate apostolic, a prefecture apostolic and a permanently established apostolic administration. A list of Catholic dioceses, of which on the 31st of December 2011 there were 2,834, is given. A list of Catholic dioceses. Within the Catholic Church there are also aggregations of local particular churches that share a specific liturgical, theological, spiritual, and canonical heritage, distinguished from other heritages on the basis of culture and historical circumstances. These are known as autonomous churches. The 1990 Code of Canons of the Eastern Churches defines such a church as follows: a group of Christ's faithful hierarchically linked in accordance with law and given express or tacit recognition by the supreme authority of the churches in this code called an autonomous church. There are 24 such autonomous Catholic churches, 1 Western and 23 Eastern, a distinction by now more historical than geographical. Although each of them has its own specific heritage, they are all in communion with the Pope in Rome. See the article on the Eastern Catholic Churches for a list of the 23 such churches. The total number of 24 is obtained by adding to these the Latin Church. Particular churches suis rites. The Code of Canons of the Eastern Churches defines rite as follows. Rite is the liturgical, theological, spiritual and disciplinary heritage, distinguished according to people's culture and historical circumstances, that finds expression in each autonomous church's way of living the faith. As thus defined, rite concerns not only a people's liturgy, but also also its theology, spirituality, discipline. In this sense of the word rite, the list of rites within the Catholic Church is identical with that of the autonomous churches, each of which has its own heritage which distinguishes the Church from others, and membership of a church involves participation in its liturgical, theological, spiritual and disciplinary heritage. However, church refers to the people and rite to the heritage. The Code of Canons of the Eastern Churches states that the rites with which it is concerned spring from the following 5 traditions: Alexandrian, Antiochian, Armenian, Chaldean, and Constantinopolitan. Since it covers only Eastern Catholic churches and rites, it does not mention those of Western tradition. The word rite is sometimes used with reference only to liturgy, ignoring the theological, spiritual and disciplinary elements in the heritage of the churches. In this sense, rite has been defined as the whole complex of the services of any church, a group of churches. Between rites, in this exclusively liturgical sense, and the autonomous churches there is no strict correspondence, such as there is when rite is understood as in the Code of Canons of the Eastern Churches. The 14 autonomous churches of Byzantine tradition have a single liturgical rite but vary mainly in liturgical language, while on the contrary the single Latin Church has several distinct liturgical rites, whose universal main form, the Roman Rite, is practiced in the local vernacular or in Latin, as in the Tridentine use.